the day I divorced Simon. He brought along his dream girl. We had just finished getting our divorce certificate when he immediately went next door to get a marriage certificate with her. Maybe it was because his long-time wish had finally come true, and he got too excited, he had a stroke. He's paralyzed now. Chapter 1. Simon cheated. I don't have any proof yet, and I can't rashly bring up divorce. A cheater must leave with nothing. I look at the divorce papers in my hand, already filled out and signed by me. Even though I've decided to divorce him, my chest still feels tight when I look at the papers. I place the agreement in the bottom drawer of the nightstand. I hear movement at the door, Simon's back. It seems like he's been drinking. The smell of alcohol fills the air. I frown but don't go to help him. Simon lifts his head to look at me. I don't know how long it's been, but eventually, he stretches out his hand toward me. Honey, help me take a shower. I turn my gaze away. Do it yourself. You're not drunk. And I don't like the smell of alcohol. Simon drops his hand, lowers his head, and walks past me straight into the bedroom. Soon after, I hear the sound of running water from the bathroom. Leaning against the door frame, my eyes involuntarily shift to the photo on the table. It was taken when we were in college. I pursued him, chased him for 2 whole years. We didn't get together until our senior year. Back then, all of Simon's friends were telling me to give up because he had an ex-girlfriend named Laura. In my mind, Laura was a girl who danced really well and was also very beautiful. She got into this school with extra points for her artistic talent. And during military training, she quickly became popular with a fan dance performance. For a while, her photos and name were all over the confession wall. But out of all the people who liked her, Laura ended up with Simon. Simon was also exceptional, whether it was his physique or his looks. He was among the top at school. I wasn't surprised that Laura and Simon got together. Everyone said they were a perfect match, made for each other. But less than 6 months into their relationship, Laura broke up with him, and the very next day, she started dating a rich boy from our school. Simon didn't recover from the breakup, and I met him about a week after their split. That day, a group of people organized a karaoke night and invited my roommate. After some discussion, my roommate brought all 4 of us from our dorm. That was the first time I saw Simon up close. He was really good looking. Every feature just my type. When you like someone, you have to go for it. So I added Simon on WeChat. And he didn't refuse. I felt like I had a chance. Then I chased him for 2 years. During that time, so many people told me to give up. But I didn't. Simon's face was exactly my type. Even if he didn't like me, just seeing him every day made me feel better. But he accepted my confession. After graduation, he said he wanted to start a business. And I supported him. When he went through his toughest times, I stood by him every step of the way. And just like that, I spent 7 years of my youth on him. Now, less than a year into our marriage, he's already cheated. I was lost in thought, staring at the photo, not noticing that Simon was standing behind me. It wasn't until he spoke that I snapped out of it. Alice, what's wrong? Why did you go drinking again? I turned around, pretending nothing was wrong, and leaned closer to him. The smell of alcohol had faded significantly, replaced mostly by the scent of body wash. Simon reached out and gently rubbed my head. There's been a lot of socializing these past few days. I had to drink. No choice. I nodded, not pressing further, and got up to go to the bathroom. I glanced at the laundry basket, picked up his clothes, and looked them over. The white shirt Simon had worn today had a faint lipstick stain on the back of the collar. Simon has always been meticulous. He wouldn't allow such an obvious slip-up. So it could only be his mistress, deliberately leaving a mark while Simon wasn't paying attention. Chapter 2. I tossed the shirt back into the laundry basket. A constant, prickling pain gnawed at my chest. Now that Simon's career is flourishing, there were times when people tried to set him up with girls, but he always turned them down. I thought he was different from the others. When I finished my shower and came out, Simon was already asleep, lying there quietly. The moonlight outside mixed with the warm glow of the streetlights, casting a soft light on Simon's face, adding a gentle touch to it. My hand lightly touched Simon's face. This face, it really is handsome. I prepared Simon's clothes for tomorrow and, after hesitating for a moment, slipped a tiny tracker into one of the pockets. The next morning when I woke up, Simon was already gone. I hugged myself, burying my head in my knees. When did Simon start acting strange? It seemed to have started the day before Laura reappeared in the public eye. I got dressed, tidied up the house, and made some food. Watching the clock, I grabbed my bag and left the house right at 11:30. My phone showed that Simon was at the office. I carried the packed meal and headed straight for his company. Everyone at the company knew me. I wasn't just Simon's wife, but also one of the founding members. Many decisions at the board level had to go through me for approval. I walked straight into Simon's office. He wasn't there, so I sat down on the couch to wait for him. But instead of Simon alone, I saw him walking in with Laura by his side, and Simon even thoughtfully held the door open for her. When he saw me sitting in his office, Simon visibly stiffened. Laura, on the other hand, remained composed, smiling as she extended her hand to greet me, looking graceful and confident. "You must be Simon's wife. You're so beautiful. Simon is lucky to have married such a stunning woman." I smiled and shook her hand. "Not at all, Laura. You flatter me." Laura feigned surprise. "Oh, you already know who I am?" My husband's ex-girlfriend Laura was quite the sensation back in our school days. Who wouldn't know her? I made sure to emphasize the words ex-girlfriend. Lara's expression cracked slightly, and Simon averted his gaze. He noticed the lunchbox on the table and cleared his throat. "Alice, why did you suddenly bring me lunch? Didn't you drink yesterday? You also left early this morning, so I made some soup that's good for the stomach and packed you a meal. You need to take better care of your health." I smiled as I opened the lunchbox, letting the aroma waft out. I was confident in my cooking skills. I set out the meal on the table, 2 dishes and a soup. "You eat first. I'm heading home now." As I turned to leave, Simon called out to me, "Alice, aren't you staying to eat with me?" "No, I've made plans to go shopping with a friend." As I reached the door, I suddenly stopped and looked back at Laura. "By the way, Laura, what position do you hold here? I remember you studied dance, right? That fan dance of yours sure made you a star on campus back then." "Oh, she's my assistant, a new hire." "Laura, well, Lara's pretty efficient." I nodded without asking more. It's rare to see someone get along so well with their ex. Truly a first for me. Leaving behind a visibly uncomfortable Simon, I opened the door and walked out. I came here to see just how far Simon would go for Laura. It seems that he's not afraid of the rumors outside, after all. He's bold enough to keep Laura right under his nose. Suddenly, a message popped up on my phone. "Alice, where are you? I'll come pick you up." I glanced at it. It was from my best friend, Ruby. "I'm downstairs at the office. Hurry over." Closing my phone, I leaned back on the sofa in the lobby, closing my eyes as if I were napping. Since I said I was going shopping, I couldn't let that lie be exposed so easily. Chapter 3. I got into Ruby's car, and she drove me straight to the biggest mall in the city center. "You said it, I can pick anything I want. Don't go back on your word. And don't complain if I choose something expensive. Relax. I'm using Simon's card. I won't feel bad at all." Ruby clicked her tongue twice. "You two still have such a good relationship. And now you're both so well off. Finally, after 7 years of hard work together, you can start living a happy, wealthy life. It's all been worth it. He cheated on me. I need your help." "No problem. I'll help you with." "Wait, what? Cheated?" I calmly nodded, showing no emotion on my face. Ruby's mouth dropped open like she could swallow an egg, so I reached over and pushed her chin shut. "You don't need to do much. You're a lawyer, so your words carry weight. I've already had someone draft the divorce papers. Just make sure he signs them when the time comes." "No problem. Leave it to me." Ruby's carefree attitude vanished as she nodded seriously, promising to help. Ruby has been my best friend since childhood. Every time I hit a low point, she was always the one who stayed by my side, helping me through it bit by bit. Ruby wrapped her arm around my shoulder. "Let's go. Today, we're maxing out that jerk's card." We walked into a clothing store together, and she casually picked up a dress, holding it against herself. "When did you find out?" I looked at Ruby in the mirror and nodded. "Looks good, You should try it on. I found out just recently, the day before Laura came back. Forget it. I don't think it suits me. When I pick a dress, it's not just about what I like. It has to suit me too, so why didn't you tell me? I don't have solid proof yet. Isn't it possible that he hasn't cheated? Does emotional cheating not count as cheating? Ruby didn't say anything else, but instead gave me a warm, approving look. I grabbed another dress and tossed it to her. What are you smiling at? Go try it on. Ruby pouted, still looking a bit reluctant, but she took the dress I'd randomly picked and went into the fitting room. Not long after, Ruby came back out with the dress. Excuse me, this dress has a broken zipper. An employee quickly came over to check, and then took the defective dress away. Ruby looked at me, beaming. See? It's broken. Do you still want it? Nope. You're right. What matters most is that it fits. Ruby and I shopped for over 4 hours, swiping Simon's card and buying lots of clothes. We finally ended up at a restaurant, where we slowly finished our meal. Just as we finished eating, a message popped up on my phone. I opened it to see a compressed file. Along with it came a short message. I've disguised it as you requested, waiting for you to settle the remaining balance. All right. I'll be there in half an hour. I looked across at Ruby and smiled in a way that must have looked a bit creepy. Alice, what are you up to? Come with me to the amusement park. Something big is going down. Once we got to the amusement park, I headed straight to the booth that sold plush toys. I randomly picked one up and paid for it right away. Ruby still didn't get what I was doing. There was no way I'd drag her all the way here just for a stuffed toy. But soon enough, she saw the vendor hold up a QR code, and without flinching, I transferred 50,000 yuan. Ruby grabbed my hand. Are you insane? Spending 50,000 on a plush toy? I didn't answer Ruby and instead thanked the vendor. Thank you for handling this for me. You're paying for a service. No need to thank me, miss. I walked out holding the plush toy while Ruby silently pondered beside me. Figured it out yet? Whose card did you use? Ruby blocked my path. Simon's. Aren't you afraid he'll get suspicious? He won't. Today's big expenses aren't just this one. He's not going to check each one individually. Ruby gave a helpless smile. I told you, didn't I? You're smart. Using a jerk's money to investigate a jerk, it's so satisfying. Chapter 4. In the car on the way home, I reviewed the photos I had someone investigate. The compressed file wasn't large, but it contained not only photos, but videos too. Every picture captured Simon's face clearly, and in a few, the woman's face was also visible. I zoomed in on the photos, and Lara's face filled my phone screen. I glanced out the window, where my reflection stared back at me from the glass. When I got home, Simon was sitting on the sofa waiting for me. When he saw me carrying all the shopping bags, he stood up and took them from my hands. Did you have fun today? I had a great time. I shopped with Ruby for ages, ate hot pot, and went to the amusement park. But there were so many people there. We didn't get to play much. Every ride had such a long line. We were already exhausted from shopping all day. Simon sat beside me, quietly listening to my complaints. When I mentioned my legs were sore, he immediately began massaging them for me. He was always like this, patient, gentle, and so considerate. Such a great man. If not for the cheating, I wouldn't be able to find a single flaw in him. For the next several days, I kept receiving more photos from the investigator. In the photos, Simon was smiling tenderly, taking Laura to many different places. There were even places he had never taken me to. I clutched my chest, which felt tight, and curled up on the sofa. Could there be a single day where he didn't spend time with Laura? A message notification came through on my phone. It was a voice recording, along with a text message. Miss Alice, I thought about it, and I believe you should hear this yourself. I was a bit puzzled, but I still pressed play. There was some noise at first, and then Simon's faint voice came through. After a few moments of quiet, his voice became clearer. Alice treats me very well, and I wouldn't be where I am today without her help. But the one I've always loved is Laura. I couldn't let Alice down, so I married her. She loves me, so I married her. That's all I could give her. I agreed to be with her because she chased after me for 2 years. I thought she was interesting. And during those tough early days of the startup, someone had to be willing to go through the hard times with me. Lara left me back then because I didn't have money. But as long as I make enough, Lara will come back to me. Alice loves me too much. She won't ask for a divorce. She can't leave me. So as long as I don't make it too obvious, Alice won't blame me. I'll have Lara get rid of the baby first. It's too risky right now. If Alice finds out, I won't be able to explain it. I've given Alice everything I could these past few years. Besides Lara, I haven't touched another woman. She's living so comfortably now. Isn't that all thanks to me? She should be content. The recording cut off, and my phone slipped from my hand, landing on the carpet with a dull thud. I don't know what I was thinking in those few seconds after the recording ended. All I knew was that I suddenly couldn't catch my breath, my chest tight and my heart aching painfully. Simon. I had given nearly 10 years of my youth to him. I stood by him for 10 years. In the end, it was all just one-sided on my part. So, all these 10 years, the person he liked, the person he loved, had always been Lara. And now, Lara is pregnant. Lara is carrying his child. All along, I was the extra in his world. In that case, I won't stand in the way of him pursuing his happiness anymore. I picked up my phone and dialed Ruby's number. Hello? What's up, Alice? Are you ready for the divorce negotiations? Yeah. When are you free? I'm free tomorrow and the day after. Did you cry? What happened? Did that jerk Simon do something to you? I wiped my tears. It's nothing. I just want him to sign the divorce agreement and leave with nothing. Chapter 5. The next day, I stopped Simon and handed him the divorce papers. He didn't take them. Ruby is already on her way here. I have evidence of your affair. And Lara is pregnant. Isn't she? You've never really loved me, so I won't force it. And you don't need to threaten Lara to abort the child. It's your own kid after all. You wouldn't be that heartless. Let's divorce. It'll be better for you, me, and her. You wouldn't want me to take this to court, would you? I was just saying it casually, but I didn't expect Simon to sign the papers immediately. Without any hesitation, he signed the divorce agreement. He lowered his gaze, looking at me. I was only dragging it out because I thought you didn't want a divorce. After all, you stood by me through 7 years of hard work. And I didn't want to treat you unfairly. But now that you've brought it up, I have no reason to disagree. If there's nothing else, I'll head to work now. Let's schedule a time to get the divorce certificate. After Simon said that, he left the house without looking back. I could feel it. His attitude toward me had suddenly turned cold. It must have been hard for him, keeping up the act for so long, pretending for all those years, clutching the divorce agreement. I crouched in the corner, silently sobbing. He really had no feelings for me at all. He left so decisively. Alice, what's wrong? Where's Simon? Did he hurt you? I shook my head and threw myself into Ruby's arms, finally letting myself cry out loud. After what felt like ages, I finally cried myself out and slowly stopped. Why? Why does he say he didn't want to treat me unfairly, while doing exactly that? He doesn't even like me anymore. So why did he agree to my confession back then? I was ready to give up in senior year, but he's the one who said yes. He's the one who gave me hope. So why does he act so high and mighty now? Like even looking at me is some sort of charity? I rambled, letting out my emotions in a mess of frustration. Seeing the state I was in, Ruby decided to take me out for a good time. After all, we wouldn't be able to get the divorce certificate for another month. Ruby took time off and flew with me to a lot of different places. I saw beautiful landscapes and witnessed other people's happiness. The knots in my heart gradually unraveled, and I started to feel brighter inside. So, standing in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau, looking at Simon and Lara holding hands in front of me, I felt no more waves of emotion. Lara, gently touching her still barely visible belly, walked over to my side. Lara leaned in close to my ear, lowering her voice, but her tone was sharp and mocking. After standing by him for so long, in the end, it was all for nothing. 7 or 8 years of your youth wasted. I almost feel sorry for you. I took a step back, creating some distance between Lara and me. That baby you're carrying, it's my husband's, right? Simon and I haven't even gotten our divorce certificate yet, and you're already in such a hurry to show off? I didn't speak quietly, so the people nearby heard me clearly. They started to glance at Simon and Lara with disdain. Lara's face turned pale, and she hid behind Simon. Simon forced a stiff smile at me. Let's just get the divorce certificate quickly. The moment Simon and I got our divorce certificate, Simon immediately took Lara to line up for their marriage certificate. The crowd of onlookers who had gathered earlier hadn't left, and now they looked at Simon and Lara with even more contempt. People passing by kept their distance from them. As for me, I didn't feel much. I looked at my divorce certificate several times, feeling very satisfied. Ruby had promised to pick me up for a big celebratory meal, so I sat down on a bench in the Civil Affairs Bureau to wait for her. Then I witnessed it with my own eyes, just as Simon and Lara finished getting their marriage certificate and were walking out the door. Simon suddenly collapsed to the ground. Simon's body hit the floor with a loud thud, and the people around him quickly scrambled out of the way in a panic. I watched as Lara started to cry uncontrollably, but I still pulled out my phone and called for an ambulance. Then, I hung up and turned to leave. Chapter 6. Ruby arrived at the same time as the ambulance. Afraid that trouble might find me, I quickly slipped into Ruby's car amidst the crowd. Ruby, curious as ever, glanced at the chaotic scene with people rushing around and even an ambulance pulling up. She looked like she wanted to crane her neck out to see what was going on. I reached over and pushed her head back down. Stop being nosy. Let's get out of here. Wait, what happened? Who called the ambulance? Tell me, what's going on? Drive first. I'll explain on the way. Ruby cast a few more glances outside before finally starting the car. As I looked at the crowded Civil Affairs Bureau through the rearview mirror, I began telling Ruby what had just happened. When she heard that Simon collapsed right after getting the marriage certificate with Lara, she pulled over into a temporary parking spot on the side of the road and laughed for a solid 3 minutes before getting back on the road. I stared at her, completely speechless, not wanting to say anything more. Since Simon had already signed the divorce agreement, he agreed to leave with nothing. So now, the house and the car were mine. My shares in the company remained, and I hadn't taken back his shares either. But he still transferred 5% of his shares to me, making me the largest shareholder in the company. Why didn't you take full control of the company? I don't manage it as well as he does, and I can't just cut off his livelihood entirely. Besides, Lara's pregnant, and once they have a child, expenses will only increase. I was speaking from my heart. Even though Simon had done wrong, he didn't deserve to be completely ruined. Without money, how would he even survive? I put the house up for sale on a listing platform, bought myself a small apartment, and hired movers to relocate everything to my new home in one go. Since Simon had been in the hospital during this time, I was left to manage the company affairs. I looked at the pile of documents in front of me, feeling a headache coming on. Simon used to handle all this, and I would only participate in major decision-making discussions. It had been a long time since I'd had to look through so many files. After a long day at the office, I was relieved when it was finally time to go home. But as soon as I stepped outside the company, I saw Lara standing at the entrance, waiting. After I asked Simon for a divorce, she had quit her job. Simon had probably promised to give all his money to Lara, so she could live the life she wanted. But now, I looked at Lara, dressed in a simple t-shirt and casual pants, and I was surprised. Simon had plenty of money in his account, so why was Lara, who always loved dressing up, looking so plain now? As soon as Lara saw me, she rushed over. Her face was haggard, like she hadn't slept well. Alice, we need to talk. I nodded and took her to the convenience store downstairs. We sat down inside, and she got straight to the point. You knew Simon had a stroke from the start, didn't you? I frowned and shook my head. Simon had never mentioned it to me, but Lara didn't seem to believe me. Of course you knew. That's why you wanted to divorce him, right? Now he's paralyzed, and I have to take care of him. Why should I? He promised me he'd take care of me. He said no matter how much I spent, he'd always support me. And now look at the situation. As soon as they found out about the stroke, he became paralyzed. Not only do I have to take care of him, But I'm also pregnant. And all the money's gone. You need to give me an explanation. You must cover all of Simon's medical expenses. Don't even think about dodging this. If you don't pay, I'll show up at your company every day to cause trouble. I'll make sure you can't get any work done or sign any contracts. I listened quietly after Laura finished. I smiled at her gracefully. Laura, can't get out of the marriage now, can you? Chapter 7. Laura froze, her gaze quickly turning venomous as she glared at me. Anyone who knows Simon knows that you're the dream girl he could never get. Now that he's finally married to you, he's not going to let go so easily. Perhaps you don't really understand Simon, but I've lived with him for over 7 years, so I know his temperament. The so-called letting go for love, allowing the one he loves to be happy, that can happen once, but it won't happen a second time, especially not with the Simon we have now. He's seen enough of the backstabbing in the business world and believes that only when things are firmly in his control can he feel at ease. That includes you, Laura. I smiled faintly, picked up my bag, and prepared to leave. But Laura rushed forward and blocked my way. Her voice was desperate. Please, I'm begging you. I have no money. He's still in the hospital, and I really don't have any money left. I took a step back. I thought you'd already run off with the money. Laura froze at my words, and tears quickly welled up in her eyes. You think I didn't want to? If it weren't for Simon's assistant having people watch me, I would have run a long time ago. At her words, I glanced around the convenience store, but I didn't see Simon's assistant. I took a few steps toward the window and saw someone standing outside in a black shirt. I was still familiar with the people around Simon, and I immediately recognized him as the assistant Simon had recently fired. I had thought it was odd at the time, since the assistant was excellent in every way and incredibly loyal to Simon. Why had Simon suddenly decided to fire him? Now, it seemed that Simon had foreseen this exact scenario. So, did he already know he was sick? I sat back down, lost in thought, recalling past events. Simon was always very busy, sometimes working through the night without a break. Everyone around him would say he was working himself to death. I thought the same, but I couldn't convince him to slow down. So in the end, I just let him be. I knew he wanted to make money. Without his relentless work, the company wouldn't have grown so quickly. Looking back, there were signs that something was wrong. Simon had mentioned that he occasionally experienced ringing in his ears and headaches. The worst incident happened while he was washing up. He suddenly collapsed to the floor. I heard the noise and rushed to help him into a chair. He held his head for a long time before finally recovering. I poured him a glass of water and asked him if he wanted to go to the hospital to get checked out. But Simon just shook his head. My leg just went numb, and I got a bit dizzy. I probably just didn't rest enough. He was always stubborn like that, so I thought I'd arrange a full medical checkup for him soon. But before I could find the time to book the appointment, I discovered Simon might be having an affair. That matter naturally got put on the back burner. But now, it seems Simon must have gone to the hospital. Even though he worked himself hard, he wasn't so careless as to completely neglect his health. If there was something wrong with his body, he would have been the first to notice it. I turned my head and brought my gaze back inside. Didn't expect Simon to be quite the planner. What do you mean? Laura stared at me, trying to find a crack in my expression. Don't bother looking. I really didn't know about it. But Simon probably did. I have a feeling he's getting revenge on you. I lifted my eyes to look at Laura, my tone full of certainty. Her face turned ashen, as if she had realized something she couldn't believe. No way. He loves me. He said it himself. He's always loved me. There's no way he'd be taking revenge on me. I half-heartedly responded with a few noises of agreement, but my eyes remained fixed on Simon's assistant standing outside the door. Have you forgotten? When you broke up with Simon so decisively, Simon drank until he vomited blood and ended up in the hospital. And what were you doing then? Oh right. Watching fireworks with your rich new boyfriend. The fireworks were beautiful that night, and Simon watched the entire show by himself from his hospital room. Chapter 8. Laura collapsed back into her chair, her face deathly pale. I looked at her and smiled. Don't worry, I'm just guessing. No need to take it to heart or be afraid. Simon still has shares in the company. And I won't fire him. He'll just be demoted. I'll make sure his salary is paid. So you won't be short of anything. After saying that, I grabbed my bag and left. Before stepping out, I glanced back inside. Laura was still slumped in the chair, her expression vacant, her eyes empty. I averted my gaze and made eye contact with Simon's assistant standing at the door. I nodded politely at him and then left. When I got back to the car, I didn't ask the driver to leave immediately. Instead, I pulled a small notebook out of my bag. I opened the cover, and on the front page were the words Simon written clearly. The things I just said weren't made up, nor were they meant to scare Laura. It was all written down clearly in Simon's journal. Humming a tune, I flipped through a couple of pages and then tucked the notebook back into my bag. I'd found the journal while I was moving. Simon had hidden it deep, and if I hadn't taken down everything from the bed, I wouldn't have discovered the hidden compartment under the bed frame. Inside that compartment was this notebook. The journal contained all of Simon's darkest thoughts. It was only after reading it that I realized he wasn't as perfect as he appeared on the surface. I had been with him since our senior year of college, living with him day and night for another 7 years after graduation. And we'd been married for a while now, nearly 9 years in total, and I had never noticed his true personality. How deeply he had hidden it. How cunning he truly was. But there were some things he had said that were true. He had accepted my confession and been with me simply so he wouldn't be alone while starting his business. At the time, I had chased him for 2 whole years. No matter how many times he rejected me, I never left. So, at that time, I was his best option. But some of the things he said were complete lies. He didn't love Laura. He was just bitter that she broke up with him for someone else. Laura might have been an obsession for him, but she wasn't the unattainable dream girl he couldn't have. He had gone to the hospital for tests, and while nothing definitive was found, the doctor had suspected a stroke based on his symptoms and various tests. A stroke could lead to paralysis. So yes, he had known all along. Sometimes, I can't even tell which version of him is the real Simon. He wasn't entirely heartless toward me. In his journal, he had written about planning to divorce me, but he didn't expect me to make the first move. He wrote that I had been very good to him, so he wouldn't cling to me. The person he wanted to cling to was Laura. I was so certain Laura couldn't get out of the marriage because divorce requires both parties to agree. Simon had finally gotten Laura to himself, and he wasn't going to let her go. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so eager to get the marriage certificate with Laura, nor would he have sent his most trusted assistant to keep an eye on her. And the way he signed the agreement to leave with nothing so swiftly, it seemed he truly wanted to make things difficult for Laura. Simon, with all his effort, was indeed meticulous. Drive. Let's go to the hospital. I leaned against the window and spoke to the driver. To the hospital where Simon is? Yes. Some things, after all, must be returned to their rightful owner. Chapter 9. I arrived at the hospital room and saw Simon lying in bed. Without hesitation, I pushed the door open and walked in. I placed the journal on the bedside table. Simon's eyes followed my movement, finally settling on his journal. Simon made some garbled sounds. I pretended not to understand, looking at him with concern. What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Do you need me to call the doctor? Simon, unable to speak clearly, could only make incoherent noises. I glanced at the door, got up to close it, and then sat back down in the chair. Simon, you really are a selfish, self-centered person, ruining the lives of 2 women like this. I'm leaving your journal here. Whatever Laura sees when she finds it, and whatever consequences that brings, is none of my concern. These are the seeds you've sown, and now you'll have to reap them. In your mind, maybe you think you've been good to me, but don't forget, if it weren't for your selfishness in agreeing to my confession back in our senior year, I wouldn't have wasted so much time on you. And, let's not forget, you were unfaithful in our marriage. The only right thing you've ever done for me was signing the divorce papers. But the fact that you divorced me just to drag another woman down with you makes you all the more disgusting to me. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at it. It was a message from the driver downstairs. Boss, Lara's back. I pocketed my phone and stood up, leaving the room without sparing him another glance. I didn't rush to leave, though. Instead, I found a spot to hide and watch. I saw Laura enter the hospital room, while Simon's assistant stood outside. I approached, and as soon as the assistant noticed me, he was about to speak. I gestured for him to be quiet, and he fell silent. He was on Simon's side, but between Laura and me, he leaned more toward me. I might not treat Simon well, but I would never do anything to harm him. The assistant hadn't had much contact with Laura, so he wouldn't trust her. I stood at the door with the assistant. Laura had already found the journal I left in the hospital room, and, just as I expected, she read it and reacted accordingly. She broke down, screaming and questioning Simon, but Simon just closed his eyes, not even sparing her a glance. Seeing no response from him, Laura began to hit and insult him. I turned my head and looked at Simon's assistant. "Aren't you going to step in? Am I even going to get paid now?" I thought about it. He had already been dismissed by Simon long ago. Probably not. He gave a bitter smile. Before the incident, Simon only paid me 1 month's salary in advance. "Come back and work for me. You'll be my assistant. Same salary as before. And if you do well, I'll give you a raise. Aren't you afraid I might leak company secrets?" I glanced at Laura and Simon inside the hospital room. "You won't. I don't know what Simon did to earn your loyalty, but if you're this dedicated to him, you wouldn't ruin the company when he needs money the most. After all, without the company, he wouldn't even be able to pay for his medical bills." The assistant didn't say anything, but he took out his phone. I scanned the QR code on his screen and added him as a friend. "Thank you." The assistant finished speaking and then walked into the room. I stepped aside, standing behind the wall so no one could see me. The assistant would occasionally update me on Simon and Lara's situation. I would listen casually, not paying much attention to it. For a long while, I didn't hear anything more from the assistant. The next time I heard about them was a year later. Laura had given birth to their child, but shortly after, she was taken into custody. The reason? Child and spousal abuse. I put down my laptop and glanced at the assistant, who was working at his desk, focused on paperwork. Then I looked away. He really was loyal. I rubbed my temples and got back to handling my own work. From here on, none of this would have anything to do with me. Whatever their fate might be, I was moving toward a future without them.